Hey, how's it going? Welcome to my tiki bar. Stick around and I'll show you how I built this tiki bar from start to finish, from an idea to completion. It's a nice little outdoor entertainment area, beachside. Ocean is just short distance from here. And stay tuned. I'll show you how I did all this. Hope you enjoy. Good morning. How we doing? We're going to start a new tiki bar today. Um, these two boards represent the countertop, which is going to go here, come across here. There's going to be about 4 feet of space, working space, activity space. And then over here, it's going to turn and come back a little bit, leaving about a 3 feet opening, maybe a little more because of this. This one is going to have 6x6, two 6x6 posts. It's going to have a beam on the perimeter on 3 sides. And instead of my usual short little roof, this is going to be a full hip roof going up to the center, kind of up here somewhere. And that's about it. So I'm starting with the beam. I don't want the beam any lower than this door opening. So I'm going by here. The bottom of the beam will be the same as the door opening. So the bottom of the rafters are going to be up here somewhere. It's going to be a lower pitch, whatever that ends up being, whatever it is there, I'll make it work out here. This beam is going to be notched into 6x6 posts, fully supported. Because it's a bigger roof, I'm having a bigger beam than usual. And that's going to be it. I'm going to start my first step, really. My next step, I kind of laid it out. My next step is going to be to set up the 6x6 posts, uh, get a laser line from this mark to notch out for the beams, do the same thing back here, and then cut the beams, install them, start cutting rafters. And then the very last thing will be to fill in the bottom. It's going to be louvered walls at the bottom, and I'll show you how all that goes together. So stick around, check it out. Hope you like it. So I got my laser clamped onto the piling here, kind of like that. And it's shooting a line just at the bottom of that door opening. And I marked on here 3¼ by 7½ tall. I've got the same thing on this side. I'm going to chisel, I'm going to cut and chisel and notch that out a little pocket. It's only going to be about 1 inch deep, but that'll help keep everything secure. Okay, I got my little 1 inch deep notches, pockets chewed out of there, rather clean. Here's the other one. Not bad. That'll give us something to sit in. And now we're going to go to the 6x6. Okay, I got this one 6x6 notched at the other end, but on this end, here's how I secure it to the concrete. There's no need to, for what I'm doing, there's no need to anchor something to the concrete. I drill a hole and I put this little slug of rebar just to keep it from shifting around. It's got too much weight on it. It ain't going nowhere. What's that? That's about half. Then I take this, tap it into there. Then we come over here to my mark. So I know my post is going to go here. I measured that post and I found the mark here. So I'm going to drill this with my hammer drill. Just like that. and the post will fit right in there. Voila. So I got my notches in the piling, and I notched out my 6x6 post and set it on top of the 3/8 rebar pin into the concrete. And I put this up temporarily, tacked it with a screw into position over here. Now I'm going to level the post. There's my driver. That looks very good. I'm going to mark the back side of this notch. So I've got the first section of that side beam in place. And then I use some of these deck boards as braces to keep the post plumb this way, while I'm going to take a measurement across there and start building the long beam. Okay, here we are at the end of day one. I got the common rafters, I got the hips and the beams and the 6x6 posts. Good morning, day two. What we're going to do, we're going to have two jack rafters here and two jack rafters here. And the spacing on these, I took this span from here to here and divided it by 3, which gives me 2 placements of rafters. I took this span because these are different pitches. This is a 7, this is a 5.5. These are going to have a different span, but I want the rafters to line up on the hip in the same position. I think that's going to look appropriate. So I've made little tail patterns, which gives me the top cut and it gives me the tail cut. And it's not the finest way to do it, but I have my locations here, and I pulled off of here to get these locations. And then I took a measurement from the top of the hip to the bird's mouth. And let me show you how I lay that out. So I got my top cut. I know this board has a slight crown this way, so this is the top. I lay this on the end, and it's got the stop blocks that I could slide it along. I don't have to get it in line. So I make a pencil mark at the top. That's my top cut. I know what my dimension is, so that's the top of the cut. I go to 45.5, and I make a little arc right there. Then I bring my tail pattern back, and I line up this point of the bird's mouth with that arc. And voila, mark the bird's mouth, mark the tail. There's a jack rafter. So I made these little jigs, simple little jig. It's going to go up against the end of the tail like that. I'm going to clamp it in place, and it sticks up above. I'm going to hold it down just a fraction below the top of this rafter. So I could drop a board on here and it can slide down and hit this point. It'll have a little bit of overhang over the edge of that tail, and it should be a good look. And I've got a nice clean board to put on the end. I could just gently let it slide until it hits the jig on either side. So I got this nailed off. I can remove these jigs because I'm going to use them on the sides. Now I can stack new boards up on top of here and feed them running wild. I'm going to cut them off later, and so we're going to be marching along right now. Here's my concern. If I stack like 5 or 6 boards up there, I'm going to have trouble finding the rafter when I nail it. So if I put 2 at a time, I could see it here and I could see this nail, and it's a short distance to keep my nails in the rafter. Okay, I got the roof complete. On to preparing for the countertop. Countertop's going to be at 42 inches. And underneath it is going to be louvered walls that have those 2x4s with the routed grooves on the side. And those have to all be level, so I'm going to get my laser out. But before I do that, the countertop's at 42 inches. So I got a little tick mark, just a little tiny mark at 42 inches. Countertop is going to be made of 3 2x8s, so they're 1.5 inches thick. So I'll go down 1.5 inches. They're supported by a 2x4, which is 3.5. So I'll go down a half, 1, 2, 3.5 for the 2x4. That's going to be sitting on top of another 2x4, and I'm going to give it another 1/8 inch of play. And maybe I shouldn't have wrote it right there. Maybe I should have done it over here. But that's going to be the top of the louvered panel of the receiver board. I forget what you call it. So I'm going to set up my laser, and I'm going to put a mark on both sides of this, a mark over here, and a mark over here. And those, then we'll get into installing the louvers and the bottom plates and building up to the louvers. Okay, here's a simplified process. We're going to have a 2x4, a 2x4, 2 of these blocks just to keep things off the ground. And then, is that a little too long? Why is that long? If it's long and I force it, it's going to push this out, and I don't want that. I'd rather have a little wiggle room. This ain't going nowhere. I'm going to get this flush on top of the block and nail it to the block. Here's my little spacer, which I want to keep on this edge and this face here. So I just bring it around, get it spaced right there. What I could do now, I had my marks right here. I could measure. That's 31 3/16, and that's 32 1/8, because the concrete is sloping that way. But we're going to keep the tops the same. So this is later in the day, and my microphone battery was dying. At some point, my camera was dying. But these are the louvered 2x4 end pieces. They're sold in pairs and they're bundled together as a left and right unit. So when I first pick them up off of the delivery, they have these plastic straps holding everything together. I separate them, and you see there it's a left and a right, and they have a top and a bottom. You see the R at the bottom and the L at the bottom. The concrete slopes, so the concrete is not level, but we need to maintain everything level from the top. So I take this one, and right there, that distance is 5/8 of an inch from the edge of the routed section to the end of the board. I need to maintain on all of these trim boards that I cut, I need to maintain that 5/8 of an inch so that they're all going to be perfectly level, because this came off of a laser line. Long story short, it's just a matter of getting measurements from your plate to your laser line, cutting everything starting from the top and working your way down. So you get your top right. In this case, it's a 5/8 of an inch difference from that routed edge. And then cut the top where you need it to be, and then take your measurement and cut the bottom. It is where it is. You nail your sides in, and you repeat as necessary on the next section. My next section's a bit longer, and there's two sections in the middle. Again, I set the laser up and put my tape, and wherever the line reads, I cut them. And I double a left and right together and nail them back to back, and then we put them in place and carry on. And I wanted to show you what I was talking about. So we need a 5/8 offset from here to my cut, and the best way to do that is just put your tape at any increment of an inch, and then go up 5/8 and put a mark over here, and that's 5/8 from that. Cut that. They're all the same. Here's a few that I nailed together for the center supports, and they have the same 5/8 there. Look at that, pretty good. So we've got our measurement of our full plate all the way from the post to the post. We're going to have 3 sections. As I put that block on the ground, we're going to have one of these somewhere in here and one of these somewhere in here. So I take that number, take the total number divided by 3. Then when you look at the space here, it's about 1 inch and 5/8. So I take that number divided by 3, subtract 1 inch and 5/8, and that's what I can make these louvered boards. And based on, there's 6 here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We could put 6 here and 6 here. So I can cut 12 at this number. And then we'll measure these individually and fill them in, because they may fluctuate a little bit. Even though things are plumb, you never know. A lot of times I'm working off pilings that aren't exactly plumb. So I like to gang cut, especially if I'm doing a big garage and it might be 27 in each section. Then I could cut 54 all together, and then lay them out, bang out the sides, and then just double check. So I'm going to set up my stock block on the chop saw and go to town. I'm not going to town, but I'm going to cut 12 of these louver boards for this section and this section. And these boards are wet and heavy, so I don't want to just slam them into my stock block. I want to gently get them there. So I've got my 12 boards cut. And I like to keep them stacked with the board. These three came from one board. These three came from one board. One of the things I found out, if you just start stacking these together, then you have three or four that look identical, and then it switches to three or four or whatever. You see batches of boards going into batches of boards. I like to make it completely random. I like to start in a pattern that you're not going to notice. There's only 12 I needed here, but I've got them out of 4 boards. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then start again here. 1, 2, and then 3, 4, and then like that. Again, these aren't nailed. They're not even marked or anything. I'll take one. I'll find the good side, and this is the better side, and I'll tap it in here. Let me move that out of the way a minute. There, slides in nicely. Then I'll bring this side over, just like that. I've got my rubber mallet, get it snugged up, and I don't have my gun on me. I can still put a toenail. So I'm get everything tight in that direction, get everything flush in the front. That's pretty good right there. One toenail. That's all you need just to keep it from moving. Then we can repeat. This one might need, nope, it doesn't. I wondered if it needed to be ripped down, but it clears up here. That's all nice. And that's it for this side. We don't even need to nail this. We don't need to do anything. We can go to the other side and proceed with the same steps. So you could see there that there's no, it doesn't look like one board used after or to the next one. It's all kind of random, kind of, you know, like bricks. They're all a little bit different, as opposed to 3 of them being the same and then 2 of them being the same. So I'm going to tap these in opposite directions like that. I'm going to measure the top one, get a tight measurement, which is 43 7/8. This should fit tightly snug in there, but not too tight. Now we can measure these individually and randomize them as they go in. So I installed the final louver boards. These have been cut to fit the top plates, which haven't been fastened yet, but I just get it flush with the frame in the front. I can shoot it down. I can toenail it. Either way, or a little bit of both. And then these can be nailed right where they are. Get them flush in the front. And that is it.
Brought to you by Dirty Beats. Straight from the streets.
So, what I've done wasn't very much. I placed a 2x8, which is dirty and ugly, but we'll clean it up. And I marked this corner and cut it on the 45, which is the circular saw. At the same time, I marked an inch overhang from this edge of the band and cut it on that inch line. Not necessarily square. Is it square? It's extremely square. So now we can slide it out of the way because we're going to start working on this piece. I want to make sure this lines up well. Let me do a little here also. So you see it's hitting here, but a gap there. We need to get a mark on here that represents that. So I'm going to go a little bit away, but 5.5 inches in, that could be right here. And that's 9.5. Same thing, put the square on our board. Still, this is a little twisted out that way. So a little heavy there, but 5.5 in. That fits like a glove. And it has the 1 inch overhang. And then when you come over here, fits very nicely. Flush on the outside, and when it gets to the inside, it might be a hair long. It might be a 1/16 of an inch long. This is only for right here. Was it tight? That turned out really well. Let me back up a little. That ain't bad at all. I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to sand it. I'm going to route some edges on it. That's a pretty decent cut too. Also a little long, but I could fiddle with these two ends. Take a little, take a little, take a little until they fit well. These are just some scrap 2x6s. I'm also thinking about having this one run square like that, and then have this one run square like that, because when they shrink up, you see it a lot in that 45. You don't see it nearly as much if you have a 90-degree cut. You see that? That also worked out good. I was clamping this down. You see this here? Look at that. Compared to my hand. Looks like a mosquito, doesn't it? Welcome to Crazy Town. Okay, we can see daylight now. We're on the road home. We can see daylight, meaning we're almost done. Just got to put the final trim around the louvers. And then we need to do some final sanding. I did routing. I did rounded edges. All the boards fit nicely between the pilings and the posts. But we're going to come around and put a board on the bottom. Then we're going to put a board on the top. And then we're going to trim it with something like this on the ends, as well as, that's going to fall over, as well as covering up this seam. So we'll do that on the outside, both faces, also on the inside. It's a nice finished product. Here she is. She's all finished. As I look around, I see more areas I could sand. I always do that. I just finish sanding and then I see more areas. There's always something. Um, and I had a mistake at the beginning because there's different pitches. The bottom of the roof wasn't planing. I ended up correcting that. I ended up cutting like 3 inches off of these rafter tails, and then so I had to pull the decking off, cut 3 inches off, roughly 2 3/4, something like that, and even on the hips. So these 7 tails across here, and would cut it with the jigsaw in place, and then put the belt sander up there, and then the router up there in place, and then put the decking back on and cut it and fit it and rip it. And anyway, it's a much better fit at the end. It looks appropriate, but that it's called a bastard hip, and it's a bastard because you got a 5.5 and 12 and a 7 and 12. So they have the same overhang, but this one goes down more and this one goes up more, and and it throws it into a tizzy. Actual, this is the medical term for a tizzy. And it, anyway, I'm happy I was able to save it. My surgical procedure was limited, um, and I saved it. Anyway, so there's all the final trim boards wrapping around the structure. I did my final sanding, and it gets dark in here, but it fits nicely around that post. And you see I did a little bit of 45, and then I did this type of fit. I think that'll be a better look for expansion and contraction. Um, and that those scribes turned out pretty decent, I'd say, if I don't say so myself. A little walkthrough over here. I like to finish these kind of in the middle, generally in the middle, and that finished out well. Rounded end on the surface, same exact thing here. Trimmed out on the inside also. And sometimes I put a little wall, return the whole deck coming out this way a little bit, but it's already kind of tight, and there's an electrical outlet here. It's just like 37 inches as it is, so I didn't want to turn it at all and just have like a 2 inch return. So I left it like this. I think that made sense. Looking back up here, you get another area where the roof, I finish it halfway into the piling. I think it's a decent look. Um, we had a conduit coming through, and I chewed out the back of that one rafter, and I had to do the same on the roof. Can I get up there? There, you could see on the roof where I notched out the roof piece, the decking. And once you're inside, it's kind of like a finished ceiling. Um, the this common rafter here was extended, like the it has a flat cut on the top to treat it like a ridge for these two commons, and then the hips fit in there. But again, the bastard hip, it's not on a 45, and I haven't done this in 100 years. So I cut my jacks on a 45. I can't cut this one any steeper. And this one, I probably should have cut it back to, I should have figured out what it was and modified it. But um, it's a little goof, but hopefully no one's staring up there too much. All in all, I think it looks really nice. And you're inside here, and you could have a party. There's a picnic table. There's a swing. I think, well, I don't think they have another swing they're going to set up. It's going to be a nice place. The beach is just a block down the road. Then you go up into the house. The house is above. The garage is at this level. So here's my tiki bar. And I always do my tails like this. I think it's a nice look. Nobody else does that around here, so it's unique to me. Um, and this is a new roof for me, but I like the roof. It's a good look. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.